What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Thought Leader Podcast. I am your host, Dylan Barr, and in this podcast, we interview past and current thought leaders in the space of health, wealth, and or relationships in hopes of reaching, past, current, and most importantly, aspiring thought leaders. If you're someone that has a message in your heart, if you have a mastery on your mind, you're looking to get it out to the world, but you're on that precipice of getting outside of your comfort zone, this is the podcast for you. Episode 13. Today we talk to Savio Clemente in the realm of health. A little bit about Savio. He's a TEDx speaker and stage 3 cancer survivor. The man personifies transformative resilience is a really good way to describe his story. His journey is a testament to inner strength, propels a mission. He wants to empower cancer survivors and ambitious leaders towards a holistic lifestyle. He is been in IT. He is a media journalist, a board certified wellness coach. He shares wellness trends and inspirational narratives, influencing diverse audiences globally. His best-selling book and acclaimed TEDx talk, 7 Minutes to Wellness, How to Love Your Inner Stranger, exemplifies his approach. His distinctive touch lies in fostering dialogue and providing actionable steps for lasting change, guiding individuals to discover the profound truth. To know thyself is to heal thyself. This dude's the man. He used to be in IT. Then he became a journalist. He was on the red carpets interviewing people at the Oscars about a week before this interview. And being a wellness coach specifically for cancer survivors. He talks a little bit about how his journey started, being diagnosed with cancer stage 3, what his mindset was then, and how he tackling fear, but how he used that mindset to shape what he does now, to have a life that he can look back on and say, yeah, I did this. We talked about what it means to be a thought leader, not being about yourself, not being about me, but more of the following that you can create, the following that can see what it is you stand for and be gravitated towards it. He talks about connecting with your inner stranger, taking small moments of your day to spend time with that person, to understand that person, to maybe not always hear that person, but to give that person the stillness within you. Leaving a legacy, we chat about on this podcast. It's an incredible podcast. Give it a listen. This podcast is brought to you by Thought Leader themselves. Over the last 8 years, Thought Leader has made it a mission to help its coaching and consulting clients get their authentic message out to the world in hopes of reaching their own desired audience through the power of speaking and business building. With over 650 clients landing TEDx talks, hundreds more speaking on virtual and physical stages around the world, Thought Leaders perfected the art of delivering a top-tier message. They also offer programs to build and scale your own high-ticket program and authentically market and sell it to your target audience in order to build a sustainably scaled business. If you got a message in your heart, if you got a mastery in your mind, you can see that there's links below to watch a webinar, completely free webinar with Taylor Conroy. Savio talked to me about before we started recording. He's like, man, I would pay double to go through this program and get what I got from it. His TEDx talk has been out for less than a year. It's already got 60,000 views. Is an incredible light. I think you're going to see his light and his passion in today's podcast. We hope you enjoy. As always, let us know in the comments what you take away. Let us know what you think about my beard. Make fun of me in the comments. I don't give a shit. I care about the message that our followers, our clients have, and I want to share that with you in hopes to inspiring you to get outside your comfort zone or at least learn something new today. Hope you enjoy. Welcome back, everybody, to the Thought Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Barr. Episode Lucky 13. Super excited today to talk with Savio Clemente. We're going to be speaking in the realm of health. We're going to be talking about cancer journey. We're going to be talking about journalism. We're going to be talking about what you do as a wellness coach. Hopefully this can live up to last Sunday where you were on the red carpet at the Oscars. I am so excited. Savio Clemente, welcome to the podcast.
Dylan, thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm really excited to see where this conversation goes and what kind of value we can give to listeners.
I am very, very excited. You're on, like I said, I always start with this question. You're on the Thought Leader podcast, and that is a broad term. It is a vague concept for some people. You know, they hear thought leader, and some people roll their eyes because it's subjective. I like attacking that head on in the beginning of these podcasts because that means something different to so many people. So, what does being a thought leader mean to Savio Clemente?
I think it's twofold for me. Being a thought leader is really not about me as the person speaking the thoughts or the wisdom or the advice or the intellect. It's really about other people gravitating to my energy and seeing where they can take that piece of wisdom or insight into their own lives. So it's really about leading by example. It's
Mm.
not really about others trying to follow me per se.
So it's leading just because you want to lead a thought rather than lead to how many followers can I get?
100%. I've interviewed quote unquote thought leaders,
Mm-hmm.
and they always lead with the information rather than leading with how the information has influenced their own lives.
Fascinating. I really, especially in a world that we live where it's like you care less about the followers, and we live in a social media world where it's all about the followers. And I'm not going to talk about this if I don't get the likes or the results or the following that I want to. It's not about that. It's about the heart of the message.
Yeah.
Um, I'm so excited to hear about your journey, man. I believe in the power of story. You're a TEDx speaker. You're a journalist. You've been on the red carpet. You've interviewed people like Venus Williams, you were saying, which is sweet. Um, we were talking before we started the recording, though, and I want to understand where this story started. You were an IT guy for a while, right, in your past life. And then all of a sudden you get hit with stage 3 cancer. Can you walk me through kind of that part of your story? What were you doing? What happened? And what was it like at the very beginning of that cancer journey?
Yeah. So my story starts with cancer in July of 2014, but just a couple of years prior to that, I was an IT guy, did a lot of sort of think tanking and behind the scenes project management. I was really good at it, but it didn't really give me the joy that I wanted. I went to school for that. And then I also was part of a team of three other individuals. We formed this production company. And to be honest, things just didn't go well for the last couple of years. I invested a lot of my financial resources, a lot of my energy and time into it. And it felt and it seemed like when cancer came in July of 2014, that even though physically my life seemed wonderful, like I was working out 6 days a week, eating organic foods, and doing spa sessions and
Mm-hmm.
exercising and doing all those wonderful things that we're told to do, my emotional self was not there. I was in that business relationship. There was issues there. I didn't have the courage to speak up and say what I was feeling, and I'm not saying that was a result of my cancer, but I think it played a huge part in the unnecessary stress that I taxed myself with. And so, once again, cancer came in July of 2014. My stomach started getting distended. I was on a trip with a friend. We went to Paris, London, and Amsterdam. And I kept getting these like huge night sweats. They were like consistent and persistent night sweats. And I just thought it was the environment, something I ate. I came home and it happened 3 or 4 nights after that.
Mm.
I was like, "Okay, something's definitely wrong." And so at that point in time, I was seeing a naturopath. Basically, he analyzes your blood work and he tells you what kind of diet structure, what kind of supplements to take. So I was seeing that and I went to him and he's like, "Savio, there's like 3 or 4 things this could be. I really think you need to go to mainstream medicine and figure what this is out." So he said, "Get a sonogram." And I'm like, "Sonogram? Okay."
Mm-hmm.
So I go to the sonogram office. They would not let me leave the office for an hour and a half. I'm not kidding. After it was done, and then they came out and said to me, "We need you to call a relative or a friend to pick you up." I'm like, what are you talking about? Pick me up.
Yeah.
I have a car. They're like, No, we need you to have a relative or friend pick you up." I'm like, okay. So my dad came. He took me. They said you should go to the hospital. Went to the hospital, and literally within an hour later, they admitted me to the 5th floor. And that same night, I heard nurses talking and mumbling that I would be transferred to the 7th floor, which they called the cancer floor. So that night, I had an idea that I had cancer. I didn't know what kind of cancer. No one told me what kind of cancer at that point, but I knew that that's what I had. And so that's where that aspect of finding out about cancer came to be.
even hearing it, it's like you can kind of have that picture in your mind. And hopefully you're cool going back to it. You said it sparks your journey, so I think we can go a little bit deeper. Can you walk me through what those first moments were like? I'm about to go to the seventh floor. I don't know. It's like part known, part unknown.
Yeah. Usually when you're told you have cancer, you have some type of choice. The choice is I will figure out what kind of protocol I'm going to take, what kind of doctor I want to go see, or I can go to another doctor and get a second opinion. I didn't have any of those choices. I remember being really um, sad, not because I was afraid, quite honestly, of dying, because to me, things aren't over until they're over. It
Mm-hmm.
was really about, for me, disappointing people or not feeling like I did what I needed to do in this life.
Mm.
You know, I was only 38 years old. And so for me, basically, they admitted me the next day to the seventh floor. They scheduled a procedure where they had to put a nephrostomy tube because my stomach was getting bigger and bigger. At that point, I got about 8 liters of fluid out of my abdomen. I was in the hospital for about 15 days total, but out of those 15 days, the first 7 days I was bedridden.
Mm-hmm.
And when they put the nephrostomy tube, the doctor whispered in my ear and said, "It's a diffuse large B cell lymphoma." He says, "I'm sorry, it's stage 3." But he said to me, "We have the medications necessary. So if you're going to get a cancer, that's the cancer to get." Now that all came in one sentence, and I was like, "Oh,
Jeez.
okay,
Could
all
you
right,
repeat
yeah."
that?
Exactly.
Wow.
And you know, I remember when they put the nephrostomy tube, the nurses said, she's like, "You didn't flinch or anything." I said, "Listen, you have a job to do, and I'm going to try to make your job easy.
Mm-hmm.
Me squirming or yelling or screaming or crying right now is not going to help you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just do what you need to do. I'll do what I need to do, which is self-regulation, and I'll figure it out." And so that was my journey, 15 days. And I was told 3 days before I left the hospital by the medical director. She had a face-to-face with me. She goes, "Listen, Savio, we know your medical history. We know you don't even take aspirin. We know you've seen a naturopath. We know you do vitamins and all that stuff. But I'm telling you now, if you do not do your first round of chemo, I I can't say what's going to happen to you." I said,
Mm-hmm.
"Really? It's that serious?" She's like, "Yeah, it's that serious." So I listened to my own wisdom and counsel. I had a
Mm-hmm.
friend who said to me, "Are you sure you want to do chemo? It ravages the good and the bad." And I had to search within myself. I speak about this in my TEDx talk, where a movie came to me, a movie that I saw in the 90s came to me, where Keanu Reeves plays Siddhartha. I tell the story all the time because I think it's very important. And in the movie called The Little Buddha, Keanu Reeves plays Siddhartha, and he was meditating. He left all his worldly possessions behind, family, riches, wealth, and he was meditating with two other ascetics. And he overheard while he was meditating two individuals on a fishing boat, and they had an instrument. And one of the older individuals go, "If you hold the string too tight, it will snap, and if you leave it too slack, it won't play. The path is the middle way." And literally, that movie came to me in my
Mm-hmm.
head. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I can do chemo, but I can also do a whole bunch of integrated modalities." So I knew for me, that was my choice. And I knew that I had to do what I had to do once I got out of this hospital. But for right now, that's what I had to face.
I mean, so you go into something that scary, right? Chemo is a scary word, right? My mom's a breast cancer survivor, and for her, it was not the way that she wanted to go about it. She didn't have stage 3, but it's like for you, even being able to find yourself through that of, all right, let's come back to ease. What can I do here? You find the middle way. For you, what were some of the biggest, as you went through the journey? One, how long was it? And, hindsight now looking back, what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned in that time of your life?
So all in all, it was 4.5 months. So I did 6 rounds of chemo every 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Each chemo bed appointment was about 4 or 5 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
My dad and my other family members were like, "You want us to come?" And I'm like, No, you staring at me while I'm getting chemo, it's not really going to help me here.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate the support, but it's just going to make me more self-conscious." I said, so my dad's like, "Can I at least pick you up?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course you can pick me up." So he would pick me up. Um, I did a whole bunch of integrated modalities. I'm a board certified wellness coach. So I'm just saying what I did. I don't advocate people to do these things,
Mm-hmm.
but I searched high and low. I created a Google alert for my cancer. I did everything from energy medicine to ozone therapy to even reading the Quran and passages from all the holy books
Mm,
to see if there was a semblance of healing. I focused on healing as a laser beam, like laser beam focus. I put everything else to the side. I was like, I could lose money, no big deal. If I don't have my health and I'm not able to do things in the world, then what's the point of having a savings account? It's just fruitless. So that was this idea of focusing on healing as the main ingredient that's going to help me was my saving grace. So in other words, people always, and I have these conversations with my coaching clients all the time, people always allay a lot of their personal power and responsibility to something not Dr. Oz in the world, but like the presence of like Wizard of Oz, like the Oz, which is the doctor, right? And
mm-hmm.
so they end up giving away all their power. Whereas it's a tandem, you have to work in tandem with healing, because I tell people all the time, healing doesn't always take place in the chemo bed. Healing doesn't always take place in the hospital. It takes places in ways and means that we as humans don't understand. And so our key is to let go of all our preconceptions and our misconceptions and just really focus on what is it that's going to give me not only the ease, but give me sort of the strength to carry on.
You say that before you went into like physically you were there. Like I almost
Yeah.
and you correct me if this picture is wrong, but it's like physically there, working out every day. Of course, not taking aspirin. I grew up in the same type of household. Physically there, working out a bunch. You know, IT guy, like go 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 go. Very almost like that masculine energy,
Yeah.
right? Want this, go do it. That feminine out of balance though, like that emotions, like and then you go through something like this, you get into balance. What was the biggest lesson you learned about finding mental and emotional balance through this journey?
Cancer brought this aspect of shame that I didn't want to really see. I
Mm.
didn't want to be seen as less than. So it also brought out this aspect of vulnerability. Brene Brown would have a field day with me on this. But and it took me years to unravel that, to be honest. So the way my cancer journey goes, it started in July of 2014, 6 rounds of chemo every 3 weeks. In between that, I did a whole bunch of integrated modalities. And then I remember 4.5 months later, December 20th, that is, I went in for my scan after the quote unquote oncologist said that your protocol has been finished. And I was given a remission status. And this past December of 2023, it's been 9 years of remission. I still get checked once a year. They told me I don't have to. Thank you.
You're
They
welcome.
told me I don't have to, but for me, I also want to make sure I do the most responsible thing, which
Mm.
is just make sure that I check off all the boxes for my own health and well-being. I still allow that story of mine to carry me. So I lost my hair as a result of chemo, and I decided to wear it as a badge of courage. People said it's a good look,
It
and so
is.
thank you. So I've kept the look, and it's also made my life so much easier, to be honest. And so I tell people all the time, I don't know if I would ever classify my cancer as a blessing, because a blessing is something that's bestowed upon you that you feel that you earned.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say it opened up a huge path, and we can get into this, of allowing me to not only do the work, but also to see myself as a reflection in other people's pain and purpose. I think that's the missing ingredient that we as humans don't see. We always see the difference, but we don't really see what we are connected to and with.
Mm. So it allows you a way to tap into and relate with some of the people you work with now. It's like, yo, I've walked the path, not the same path, but I've walked down this path. You can empathize a bit more in that
Yeah.
situation. So as you're talking about them putting like fluid in you or something earlier, and you're thinking more of the nurse than yourself, right? What I'm
Yep.
sensing from it is like a being that thinks of other beings, right? Because
Yep.
if we look in hindsight at what you went through, right? It's like now you're a best-selling author, you're a TEDx speaker, you're a wellness coach, you're a journalist, go to the red carpet. Was there you have like a bonfire passion of what you do now? Like was there a spark that you found in that cancer journey, and if so, what was that spark? Cuz you shifted from IT to what you do now feels like a big shift. What's at the heart of that?
So it took me 5 years to get there, because medical science says that after 5 years, your cancer is less likely. It still can reoccur,
Mm-hmm.
but it's less likely to reoccur. So I wanted to make sure that I hit that safety net. And so there's a lot of planning and processing. I had no idea, to be honest with you, that I would be a board certified wellness coach. I I was a writer. I pitched an idea to my editor about cancer survivorship. And so he thought of a great title, which is I Survived Cancer and Here's How I Did It. That particular interview series, at this point, I've interviewed 200 cancer survivors, different walks of life, different types of cancers. That on his end, he said to me, this needs to be a book. So we launched a book about a year and a half ago, became a bestseller. And so for me,
Congratulations.
thank you. I appreciate that. To me, that all that means is that the story of hope survived, because I really want, that's the reason why I did the book. I didn't do the book to see my name emblazoned on the book. That's not a big deal for me. I really wanted the stories to come out. So I told 35 of their stories. I told my own story. And it latched on to what people perceive as something that's huge, and a huge adversity is something that they can actually sit with, and sit with in a very practical way, and also in a very inspiring way. And then I continue that along with the help of you and your team in launching my TEDx talk, which came out I did it in Raleigh, North Carolina in October of 2023. And I was in India with National Geographic. I do work for them as well. So I visited 8 cities in India, and it literally came out December 19th. And I'm like, I am not in any headspace to promote this. So I came back in early January and I started promoting it. And as of today, it's close to 60,000 views. So I'm really happy about it.
Congratulations. That is,
thank you.
So you start doing the book. What made you want to go on the stage, the TEDx stage, right? You're standing on the red dot. That's scary as hell. Yeah. What made you want to? And what was the process like to find one? Did it take you a while? Was it a lot of like beating your head against the wall kind of thing? Or did it come more effortlessly to you? What did you learn through that process?
So I live in the world of information, right? We all do, but I get influx. That not only information from social media, information from websites, but I get pitches sent to me all the time. And I read this one survey, and some of it's an urban legend, but there are some findings to it that says that more people fear public speaking than they fear death. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, I faced the death part. It wasn't something I wanted, but I faced it. And literally, Dylan, I'm not kidding. I woke up in 2023, in January of 2023, and I said, what is the one thing that I'm afraid of? And I'm afraid of public speaking. Not public speaking in the sense of panel or being in a team. That's like no sweat for me, right? I'm doing this podcast with you. It seems effortless. I interview people. That's effortless. This idea of standing up in front of people you don't know, literally standing up, saying something and waiting for them with bated breath to say what you're going to say next, and making sure that it's coherent and makes sense, and also brushing up against your own self-consciousness or your own insecurity, was a challenge for me. And I said, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to find training. I'm going to have to find people who have done this. And that's when Thought Leader came into my world. I interviewed a couple of other people, and I'm like, no, doesn't feel right. The community that you guys built was something that felt right to me. It was investment in self. And I was like, I'm going to do this because it's something that I want to overcome and face. And I also knew that the overarching reason to do the talk, once again, wasn't really about me, Savio, the speaker. It was about, what am I going to share that can allow other people to get out of their own self? And so my talk is called 7 Minutes to Wellness: How to Love Your Inner Stranger. And I leave it vague on purpose, because stranger to me, someone asked me this recently, was that guy in the hospital bed who knew his physical body was dying because I was stage 3, but this other parts of me was still alive. My emotional body was still alive. My mental acuity was still there. I was still, sort of spiritually tapped into the things that I've learned. I grew up Catholic, but I've been a very spiritually open guy. I've studied comparative belief systems for most of my life. And I was like, that's the stranger. But it didn't have, that whole story sort of unfolded 9 years later when I got onto that stage. And your team really helped me figure out for myself, how do I find the through line with all this messaging? But I always knew what I wanted to talk about. I just, I have to jokingly say that the second day that I was doing the sessions with you guys, one of them stopped me and they're like, are you a writer? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, you're gonna have the hardest time. Writers always do, because they're like, writers like to say 5 things for one word. Just say the word. And I'm like, really?
Mm.
They're like, yeah, it doesn't have to be fluffy. It just has to land. I'm like, oh, okay. And Tanja would be happy. At this point, I've had 86 revisions. And she actually said if someone gets to 100, she would give them a prize. I didn't get to 100, but
Oh.
I did 86 revisions. Yeah.
Man, so walking through the experience of getting it out there, the first thing you talked about is like just tackling fear, which I'm probably going to come to last in this interview. I really want to go into it, but tackling fear, finding the through line, and the other thing that you mentioned was community.
Yeah.
Working with someone, whether it's thought leader, whether it's something else. What was the biggest takeaway you got from thought leader? Was it the community around you? Was it more of the technical support or like that competent support of finding the through line? What seemed to be the biggest help for you?
I would probably say it was the learnings and the competence. I'm self motivated. I'm a coach. This is what I do. Accountability is part of my DNA. So I didn't really need help in that. I had someone within my cohort. We would meet every week, but I didn't really need that support. It was more about just sharing and learning from each other. But it was really about, how do you answer the interview application questions? How do you create that 1 minute video that you need? When you get on there and actually do the talk, what is the framework that you use? And you guys had such a beautiful framework that allowed you to go in and out and allow emotions to rise and fall, allow this idea of letting some information land, but not land too heavy so that they are outside of themselves, so that they're still invested in your talk. My talk was 10 minutes. It was in Raleigh, North Carolina. Like I said, I spoke to the organizer. She said there was over 300 applications. And then they ended up choosing me to go first. So I set the bar. And anyone who watches my TEDx talk might not know, and I'll spill the little tea here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they chose me to go first. So I go in, I did 1 minute and mic issues. Okay. I go back. I go on 2 minutes. The organizer comes down. She's like, oh my God, we have mic issues. But she's like, don't worry. This isn't live stream. It's a live audience. By the way, it was 225 people in the
Oh
audience.
my gosh.
Yeah. People I didn't know. Raleigh, North Carolina. I live
Yeah.
in New York. And then she's like, yeah, just go back and fix it. Go back and fix it. The third attempt was beautiful. No mic issues. I did the talk. I will say after the second time that I got interrupted, I lost my thought process. I was like, where am I in the story? Where am I in my memory palace story? And then after someone came to me after everyone's talk was done, and he's like, dude, he's like, what I saw up there. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I saw a baseball game up there. He's like, strike one, not your fault. Strike two, not your fault. And strike three, you hit it out of the park. He's like, and I looked at him, I said, yeah, I'm a New Yorker. I'm like, I've been through the dot-com crash when I was in my 20s out of college. I've been through a business failure. I've been through my own cancer journey story. I'm like, if they wanted me to do it 20 more times, I'll do it 20 more times. Because he's like, you just were like game face on. He's like, you didn't even yell, scream, get angry, get frustrated. I'm like, no, I came here to do a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do the job. So I actually treated the TEDx the same way I treated my cancer. I came to do a job. I don't know what the outcome is, but I came here to do what I needed to do.
And it seems like, again, in this sense, you came here to spread a message that people can. It's not about Savio. It's about the message, right? And that message being this, finding this inner stranger in your life.
Yeah.
Do you have, like, has anything happened since then with like people reaching out to you, like, of what they learned from a story like that?
Yeah. So a couple of people said to me, they're like, what do you actually mean by that? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think I meant? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, well, so what does it mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
And then one of them said to me, it's that part of themselves that they don't bet on. Another one said to me, it's because a lot of people think the inner stranger is your inner critic. No, it's not bashing you. It's not telling you you're not good as. It's just someone you don't know. Just like a stranger could be a friend or a foe.
Mm.
And so another person said to me that inner stranger was their child that they never really gave love to, and that they are trying to make up for it. It's really, I did it on purpose. I wanted to make sure, and that was the great thing about, I knew that there was synchronicity or connection with the organizer, because as soon as we got on that call, she understood what I was going. She understood it for herself. it was a beautiful alignment there. And
Mhm.
that's when I knew that she was the right person for me to be on that stage with, to give that message to.
As a wellness coach now, right? Because I'd imagine Inner Stranger plays a lot to what you do. What someone that hasn't watched your TEDx talk, let's say, do you have any approaches of how someone can one tap in to find it, not from a place of like doubting themselves, not from a place of shame where Brene Brown would have a field day, right? Like, what can we do to get in there, and then also just like be with it rather than judge it?
Yeah. So I have a really fun framework called the Aloha Reboot. So a large
Love it.
portion of the healing that I looked into was also part of Hawaiian healing called Huna healing. And there's this approach called Ho'oponopono. And in simple terms, it's just repeated affirmations that say, I love you, I forgive you. And so I created an acronym called Aloha, which
Mm,
is saying hello to your inner self. And A stands for acknowledgement. So acknowledge where you are in the present moment. L is for listening. So listen to that inner voice. And the semblance of that inner voice is also this ability to be kind to yourself, because we're all great at being kind to others,
mhm,
but we're not really kind to ourselves. O is really that important piece. It's really about opening. So open yourself up to self compassion and self forgiveness.
mhm,
H is this idea of harnessing. So harness that wisdom from within. And A is really going out there and acting with that purpose. So it's called the Aloha. I made it very simple and rudimentary because I
mhm.
wanted people to latch onto something that they could do for 7 minutes. And that's why my talk is called 7 Minutes to Wellness, because all you need is 7 minutes a day in order to do that. It really allows you to get out of the external world of thinking that you have to hit deadlines or have to meet expectations or have to please other people.
Yeah.
And it's really about giving yourself that grace and that ability for time.
I love the fact of anyone can do this and it can be super simple and concrete, right? Like a lot of people, it's like you think of meditation and it's like this is going to take 30 minutes. This is going to what's the famous quote of like you should meditate for 30 minutes a day unless you have a lot to do, then you should meditate for an hour. But it's everyone always puts like this big time frame on it and you're saying, "Hey, no, it can be as simple as 7 minutes." Now, I know anyone can do this, but I'm also very curious as a wellness coach. Do you work with anyone and everyone that's going through? Do you lean more towards people that have went through cancer themselves? Is it who is that clientele that you're helping help them find their inner stranger?
Yeah. So my clients are really only cancer survivors,
Okay.
and people have come to me and said, "Wait a minute, you're saying you wouldn't do cancer patients?" And I say, "No, I have huge respect for that, but it's not my genius. My
Mhm.
genius is where you are, where you want to go, and how you can get there." So what I do with cancer survivors is really this idea of what is your next step after you survive this cancer? Because we survived it. So where's the living and where's the thriving, or where's the living and where's the acceleration aspect? And so for me, it's really about how do you want to tell your story? I was on a panel with stage 4 prostate cancer patients last week,
Mm,
virtual session, 25 of them. And one of them actually said, this is so hard and all that. And I said, you know what? I can actually allow him to say that, which I did. I can actually lean into it, which I did, or I can actually give him something that maybe he could chew on. And so I decided to challenge him a little bit. I said, okay, if I had a magic wand, and this is a classic coach question, and I waved the magic wand and took away your cancer, stage 4, cancer patient, they've tried every attempt and it hasn't worked. So
mhm.
they are nearing death, unfortunately.
Mhm.
What would you do with yourself? And he's like, I would do this, and I would do this, and I would do that. And I'm like, okay, is there anything in there right now that you can move the needle just a tiny bit more that you can do? And he's like, wow. He's like, yeah, there's a couple things. And I'm like, okay, well then you know what, do that. Because at the end of the day, a doctor can tell you that you have this medical malady and it's over and it looks grim, but you still have the ability to create. You still have the ability to imagine. You still have hope. And not only that, but there's
Mm,
one thing that they cannot take away from you, and that's your story. Your story is your own. Just because you're in a group of people who also have a similar diagnosis doesn't mean that your story echoes theirs. Yours is special to only you. And so that's the clients I help who are survivors who now say, Well, what am I going to do personally with my life? What am I going to do professionally with my life? How do I tell my story? How do I amplify my impact? So I take my coaching abilities and I take my journalistic abilities and I've combined them into allowing them to create platforms for themselves
Mm.
in however and which way that they want to get their message across.
So for you, it's this end destination, which the joy is the journey, of course, but this end destination of like, holy shit, I survived. Now what? You
Correct.
want to give these people the platform to share their story, whether it's on stage, whether it's written, whether it's any other creative outlet, fiction books,
Yep.
nonfiction books, like memoirs, like that really seems to be like, let's use the story that you've now went through to again give that message to someone, not for the followers, but for the message to potentially be latched onto by people. Like throw it out there. Is that it?
100%. And because most of the time when you're a survivor, there's two things that you're raging against. Obviously, it's the typical things. You have family members or friends who unfortunately passed away. So you're thinking about survivor's guilt. You are still on medication or you're off medication, but you're like, I'm still feeling these effects of side effects. But there's also another part. And the other part is this burgeoning desire or this burning desire within you that says to yourself, wait, I'm alive. Like I actually have a second chance at this. I don't want to screw this up. Like I have
Mm-hmm.
to tell people something of my journey here, some way. And when people see me and the things I've created in the world as a result of my cancer, which I mentioned that I don't know if I would ever call it a blessing, but it still illuminated a path. I'm creating that ability for them to see much greater than themselves. This ability to see, oh, there's someone else who's been in my shoes, but yet they're still manifesting and creating and enriching and enlivening other people. And that's what I want to get across to people that you know, I say this all the time because it's like hilarious if you think about it. We are on a giant rock in space.
Yeah.
What are we all like? People talk about all the time, like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? What's our collective purpose? Think about that. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
is this collective purpose? And so I say that on purpose because I want people to take themselves out of it. It's not always about your individual aspect of how you're contributing to the world. We are collectively contributing to whatever you call universe, God. We're collectively contributing to that. So I want to get them out of that whole aspect of, okay, all right, well, this happened to me. This horrible thing happened to me. Yeah, it happened to you. It happened to me too.
Mm.
Now what? Now what are you going to do about it?
It's again, it kind of like you said, wanting to work with these people specifically because and wanting to. You went through this, like I get you. Hey, I get it. But now let's find that second act in a sense. Let's get this story, and it doesn't have to be about you. It doesn't have to be about what you get out of it. Um, for you, because I want to get to the point of getting outside your comfort zone. That's what I want to finish with. But I am curious because there's a lot of people that are listening to this that are either going through cancer, went through cancer themselves, might find themselves in that situation, be like, fuck, I do have something to say. And who cares if I get X results or make X dollars from it, but I have something to say that other people could gravitate towards. Like you said in the very beginning, hey, it's not about me. It's about walking this story, walking this life, and some people will just gravitate towards it. How do people find you to get closer and tap into that?
Yeah. I think before they find me, they have to do a couple of things within themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
positive psychology posits this idea of sort of flourishing or managing your situation despite your challenges, or this idea of like self-regulation, which is inherent in my DNA, right? But it's
Mm-hmm.
not inherent in other people. This idea of how do you reclaim or self-monitor yourself? And so before they do that, I really say to themselves, okay, have you really seen in your own life that you have time and energy for this? Is this something that you really want to do? Because there's a theory in coaching and also in therapy that says that it's not that people don't want to change, they don't know how to change. They don't know where they are on that stages of change. And so I'm looking for people who are on that action stage who said, okay, I've accepted the fact that I survived cancer. This happened to me. I went through the motions. Now I'm ready to tell that story or get it out there or learn or impact or amplify, whatever the terms are. And
Mm-hmm.
so the way they can find me is very simple. They can go to my website,
Mm-hmm.
saviopclemente.com. On there, I'm also on social media at The Human Resolve. And I have obviously coaching. I'm building an online community as well. That's launching in like 2 weeks. So
Congratulations.
thank you so much. And yeah, those are the channels they can find me.
And is your biggest social media Instagram, TikTok, Facebook?
So my biggest at the moment is Instagram,
Nice.
but I do listen to Taylor's weekly talks, and I'm getting the nerve to do TikTok, although it might be taken away from us. So who
Yeah.
knows?
It's wild with it, but it's cool that you're in multiple places. And you said it's the human. Say it again.
It's sure. It's so I'm on all social media platforms at the Human Resolve. I'm
Love it.
on LinkedIn at my name, Savio P Clemente. I'm on Facebook at my name, Savio P Clemente as well.
I will put all those links in the description below. Man, thank you so much for one sharing your journey with this. Now, here's the last couple of questions I always like to ask because I initially wanted to title this "The Uncomfortable Thought Leader" because I
Mhm.
think a lot of people they see the outcome, they see that you've done a TEDx talk with 60,000 views, they see you're a best-selling author, they see you've been on the red carpet speaking to people like Venus and speaking to people like Venus Williams, and that's all they see.
Correct.
They don't see this uncomfortable, right, moment. What did going through cancer and living your life like why have you consistently decided to get outside your comfort zone to share your message?
I think a lot of cancer survivors, at least the ones I coach and the ones I've talked to, the ones I've interviewed, at this point, I've interviewed 200 cancer survivors. Um, I think a large portion of it is, was it all worth it?
Mm-hmm.
Was me surviving, like literally, I talked to someone a week ago. I went to Vermont last summer and she just got told she had cancer. And she said to me in the call, is it worth for me going through all this treatment? Like, she's like, my life right now is not great. And you know what? I could do one or two things in there. I could agree with her, right? I
Mm.
could be really like agreeable, which is not probably the right thing to do. Or I could just say to her, well, what do you want to do? And she didn't have an answer for it. So that's number one. It's you really have to confront yourself. And I think that inner stranger just really allows you to lean into that discomfort because I think discomfort is the only way through, as my good friend Sterling once said. Leaning into discomfort is the only way through something. It's not around, it's not back, it's only through. And I think the second thing is this idea of legacy.
Mm.
If you're going to go through this, the treatments and the after effects and the healing and looking forward to the future and being a survivor and then a thriver, it's this idea of, well, what do I want to leave the world? Like, right? My world was great. It was upside down when I had cancer. Now it's in shambles. Now I'm recreating. Now I'm rebuilding. But what do I want my legacy to be? Like, what do I want people to really think of me beyond being a mother or a parent or a sibling? What do I want people to see me as? And I think that answer can only be fussed out is if you really go deep within, because the external world holds a lot of great things that shine. And that was actually, I know you want to ask me a little bit about the Oscar journey, and I'm just going to do a little tidbit here. A large portion of the work that I do and being on the red carpet, I saw a lot of this idea of who belongs where,
Mm-hmm.
and cancer survivors rally around, right, survivorship. There's charities and there's functions and there's galas and there's a lot of money that's invested in investing in this idea of survivorship, which is great. It's wonderful. And research, which is great and wonderful. But a large portion of all that really boils down to the fact of how do we want to leave this world? Like, how do we want to do it? And
Hmm.
how do I want to tell my story in a way that allows people to to see me as an ally and see me as someone that they can rely on?
Hmm. If you see me looking down, I love taking notes from the people that I chat with because it's uh, we started this to reach the aspiring thought leaders, right? The people that are like they have a message in their heart, they have a mastery in their mind, they see the glitz and the glam, and they're like, I'm close, but they're kind of stuck in that comfort zone, and we want to learn like what is that little push. Um, One, I want to thank you so much for today's talk, and I want to. Is it cool if I recap some of the things that I've learned?
Please, yeah.
I'm actually going to start with the end in mind, which is starting towards the end of our podcast, which is I think a lot of people help. Like the biggest thing that I took away at the end there is what is the legacy you want to leave? What is it that you want to be remembered for? And very much like spending time with your inner stranger, spending time with this in potential discomfort at first, not having to have the answer right away, but to give yourself present time, conscious time to think of it. And it might be nothing at first, like aloha. You might just be saying hey and listening and not getting much at first, but allowing that picture to kind of formulate will help you tackle the fear, will help you spend more present time hanging with your inner stranger. That inner stranger could be the inner critic, but it could be a part of you that just you haven't seen before. It could be a part of you that shows you something new about your life and what you're actually capable of. And in that, finding a message, finding the mastery that you have to share. And now to the very beginning of this, not making it about you, not being like, I have to do this for the X reward, but I have to do this, or I want to do this. I get to do this because it allows me to put my passion, my story, my desire out to the cosmos, and potentially people latch onto it. It's to shine our light so bright that we reach those like-minded individuals, and doing it without fear. Savio, this was an inspiring podcast. I truly, truly, truly appreciate the time that you've given us. And I really hope anyone listening here, make sure like and comment, like and subscribe. But no, comment what you took away. Comment what you've learned spending time with your inner stranger. Comment what you've learned spending time with what you want your legacy to be. Be vulnerable, because there's one thing that I've learned from you and your story is you've been willing to be vulnerable and put yourself out there for the sake of others. I'd love to see that torch be passed on. Savio, thank you so much for being on the Thought Leader podcast.
Dylan, thank you. That was a wonderful recap. I think the only thing I can add to it is, if you don't know where to begin with tapping into inner stranger, go with the 3 areas that I call the 3 brains: the head, heart, and gut. They will never lead you astray.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Sure.
You can contact Savio below. We will see you on the next episode of the Thought Leader podcast. And we hope you have a great day for those that are listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.